Choo-choo, coming through. Super NES. Hey, wait a minute, this doesn't look like a Super Nintendo. Actually, that's because it's its Japanese counterpart in the Super Famicom. At the time of recording this, this is my only Japanese system. I'm mainly showing this as a more interesting option, since the main Super Nintendo models really aren't anything special, one's just a refined model of a bulkier Model 1. Speaking of the Model 1 Super Nintendo, as you can see the Super Famicom suffers from the same plastic oxidation as that. The other reason I'm showing this is because while this focuses on my North American Super Nintendo collection, I'm also going to be recognizing my Super Famicom collection for the first time, which is admittedly pretty small because I don't have much luck getting import games, unfortunately. At the time of recording this, my Super Nintendo collection consists of 24 games, in addition to 3 Super Famicom games. Let's not delay any farther, let's get rolling. Super Mario World. This was the pack-in game for the Super Nintendo, at least for a good while, so as a result, you often find just the cartridge and if you're lucky, the instruction manual, which, by the way, I do have, fortunately. Boxes are not real common, mainly because, if I remember it right, they only existed in rental shops for display, so finding a box for it can be quite the challenge. Of course, I have beat the game and covered all 96 paths, which was something I did in my second ever Let's Play for this channel back in March of 2021. Magic Sword. An early Capcom action game that unfortunately I don't remember too much of as I hadn't played it in a couple years. The only things that really come to mind was a lot of monster fighting and climbing up a 50-floor tower. Regardless, it had to have been pretty good because I still have it. I mainly got this game on recommendation and don't recall taking too long to beat the game, and I started from the first floor all the way to the top without any floor skipping whatsoever. Still, it's a decent enough game that I still got it on hand. Contra 3. A great run and gun game, much like its two predecessors on the NES, visually better, plays a bit smoother than the NES games, and overall, I don't think I really need to say much else about the game. It is indeed Contra. Castlevania 4. I'm not sure of any other NES action game series that transitioned to the Super Nintendo better than Castlevania did. Now granted, the Contra games were already excellently made before it shifted to the Super Nintendo, but the gameplay difference between Castlevania 4 and its NES trilogy is on a whole other level. This is just an outstanding game in every way, and is my personal favorite game in the Castlevania series. The Seventh Saga. This is arguably the hardest RPG on the Super Nintendo, and the big reason for that is due to errors in scaling. That doesn't necessarily mean that this is a bad game, quite frankly it's decent, it's just its difficulty due to the scaling makes it a pretty tough experience to get through. Despite my best efforts, I ended up getting stuck somewhere about halfway through the game and was never able to properly finish it. I may have to restart the game just to give it another go. ActRaiser. Definitely one of the more unusual Enix releases in that this is prominently an action platformer in addition to City Builder and God Simulator. Definitely a fascinating piece of work that unfortunately I don't have too many memories of. I hadn't played it in a couple years, but it did fascinate me, and that's the main reason why I kept it. Robotruck. I like the concept of this game. You're playing as a kid professor who builds robots, and the robots do the majority of the work for you. Definitely an interesting game. Unfortunately, this game is a bit pricey now, with the cartridge commanding a little over $100 at the time of recording this. My copy's not exactly in the best condition, but for the price it was at the time, about 20 bucks, it was quite the steal, so I am happy I was able to get it. Secret of Mana. Getting a working copy of this game was a complete pain in the ass. I had like 5 copies of this game and not a single one of them worked until I got this copy around July 2020. And even then I kinda demanded that this game be tested and shown that it worked before I got it. Even through all that effort though, I hadn't really played the game too much, and the big reason why is because I wanted to play the game for the channel. I just haven't had a chance to do so. If things go right this year, I might get my shot soon enough. Secret of Evermore. This is my only Super Nintendo game that has a strategy guide, which you'll take a look at later because it's a bit too big to show from this position. Before I got that guide, I had a lot of trouble really starting this game as I didn't understand the alchemy system all that well and got stuck pretty early on. When I got the guide, I was able to get through much more smoothly and was able to beat the game. It was a pretty fun one, not gonna lie. Here's a full view of the Secret of Evermore strategy guide, which looks amazing. The only real faults are a slight tear in this top left corner right here, as well as a tear in between the barcodes. Beyond that, the spine is practically immaculate. Not a single page is really worn or screwed up in any way, shape, or form, and it's just an absolute beauty from top to bottom. I'm real lucky to find it in this condition. Breath of Fire. The first game in Capcom's RPG series, though it is pretty amusing to see Squaresoft up front instead of Capcom. The main reason for it is because they were the ones that did the English translation. While that translation is a bit laughable, it's still a pretty fine game. After several failed attempts, this ended up becoming the 16th game I've played for the channel. Breath of Fire 2. This game carries a very notable distinction to me. As of this recording, this is the very last game I ever bought online, way back in the Christmas period of 2016. Wow. Now granted, there were two major reasons why I did it. The first one was that I couldn't find a single copy of Breath of Fire 2 to save my life. Even the Game Boy Advance version was completely elusive. After I got this copy, I've only seen the Super Nintendo version once since, a complete copy in early 2021. The second and perhaps more important reason was that by the time I was actively hunting this game, it was the last game in the series I had yet to play. I had played every other game except 2. Yes, even Breath of Fire 6, a mobile train wreck that barely lasted a year and a half. Capcom, what the fuck were you thinking doing that? Still, even though this game's translation is even more of a dumpster fire than the first game, I was able to complete it and ultimately finish the entire series. Lufia and the Fortress of Doom. This is one of the strange cases where I played the second game before I played the first one, though it is a bit justified considering the first 15 minutes of this game was the ending of the second game. Regardless, I did feel like the game was a bit middling and slow at times. However, by the time I actually got to playing the game, I was kind of in a burnout period where everything just felt the same but played somewhat differently. In retrospect, this game actually was alright, and I would complete it without much issue. Lufia 2: Rise of the Sinistrals. This game went by a hell of a lot faster than I was expecting, though it's not really helped by the fact that the game's default movement speed was really quick no matter what map you were on. While the game and its storyline is actually really good, the fact that you moved so quickly from place to place for much of the game meant that the storyline just kinda flew by. Despite its quick pace in my eyes, there's no doubting that this is a much better game than the first one. However, it does suffer from a very late release, around May 1996 for North America. As a result, this is not really an easy game to get for the Super Nintendo. As of this recording, cartridges are firmly entrenched in the $130 range. Chrono Trigger. This is actually a 2 games in 1 shot recording because I get to introduce my first Super Famicom game as well, which is, also Chrono Trigger. This was not by intention, by the way. Believe it or not, both of these games were gifts. The Japanese Chrono Trigger was actually the game that came with my Super Famicom as a Christmas present, while the North American one was a couple months earlier for a different reason. Because of this game ended up becoming the game I played the most versions of, as I own Final Fantasy Chronicles on the PlayStation, which includes Chrono Trigger, as well as previously owning the DS version. The only real reason I still have the Super Famicom version is because, as I mentioned at the start of this video, I only have 3 Super Famicom games, mainly due to having no success when it comes to getting imports. Not helped by the fact that the region I live in kinda treats them like the plague. Naturally, the North American version is more desired. As of this recording, this game's been over $200 for just the cartridge for the past couple years. Is it worth it? Personally, I'd rather go for the DS version because there's actually more stuff in it. Earthbound. Let's get one thing out of the way. Unlike most people, I do not consider Earthbound to be a rare game. I do, however, consider it to be an uncommon one. The biggest reason why is because my definition of rarity is how often you actually find the game in the wild. And while I do travel a whole lot, so in a way it is kinda cheating, on average I see a copy of Earthbound once every 2 months. Not to mention, just because something is rare doesn't mean it's going to automatically command a shit ton of money. The core reason why Earthbound commands over $400 a cartridge as of recording time is because it's a fantastic example of fan demand taken to its absolute extreme. That being said, yes, this is a great game, and yes, this is a legitimate cartridge. This was bought before reproduction cartridges were really becoming a thing, but even back then the cost for it was a bit ludicrous. Case in point, this game is the record holder as the most expensive game I ever bought directly. I've had some games with higher price tags than Earthbound when I bought it, but all of them have had some significant help to get the job done. Not so much the case for Earthbound. I don't really think I need to reiterate that this is a really good game, but you're better off finding cheaper options. Though if you want a legitimate cartridge, then who am I to stop you? I'm just glad I got mine before it mushroomed even more than it already did. Rockman and Forte. Translation: Mega Man and Bass. This was the only Rockman game on Super Famicom not to get released in the West, due in part to its exceptionally late release. How late? April 1998, which subsequently makes it one of the last Super Famicom games. Although it would not be a complete Japanese exclusive, as it would get ported to the Game Boy Advance for the West in 2003. Remember when I said I had a lot of trouble getting Secret of Mana? Well, I ended up buying another bad cartridge at one point when this was available, and when I had to return it, this was given as the makeup game, which was quite nice since they were equal in price at the time. Nowadays, this thing is around $40 for the cartridge, which, while it doesn't seem like much, is still the most expensive of the Rockman Super Famicom games. Of course, a part of that might be due to it being a Super Famicom exclusive, but it was a game other than Chrono Trigger that I could play for it. It ended up becoming by far my most played game on the Super Famicom, largely due to its accessibility. Star Ocean translates to, well, Star Ocean. It's not like it's in complete katakana or hiragana or even worse, whatever crazy moon language I decided to invent to put on this box. Obviously the first boxed game I'm showing here, as well as my only Super Famicom boxed game. These boxes are pretty interesting, as they look similar in size to VHS tape boxes. Anyway, all the sides are in decent shape. There is standard corner wear across the board. The only real serious fault is a crust spot right on this edge right here. That's really about it. A good one otherwise. Here's a look inside my copy of Star Ocean, which there's a case that fits everything perfectly in that box. Mainly a place to fit the instruction manual, which is in fine shape, very little spine wear, and of course the cartridge, which fits right inside here, clean as can be. The cartridge itself is usually around $20, but a complete one is about $50, so it is pretty affordable to get. Although this isn't a complete Japanese exclusive, as this game would get remade for the PSP as Star Ocean First Departure, so it's not like we don't know this game. F-Zero. A pretty good racing game for the early period of the Super Nintendo, though it is kind of a shame that the F-Zero IP just kind of went defunct after the GameCube, and the only reason people know it exists is because Captain Falcon is in Smash Bros. What a shame. Anyway, this box isn't really in the best of shape. There is a bit of bloating on the bottom, but other than that, it is kind of neat to see all four drivers on each of the corners, and of course the whole comic book theme going on with this and the instruction manual. Speaking of manuals, here's a look inside, with the instruction manual being in some decent shape with a bit of dog earring up top. Other than that, looks alright. The standard precautions booklet, which is in practically everything. And my cartridge, which definitely isn't in the greatest shape. Yeah, that's pretty rough. But it is still a cartridge that fits this box, as they're both red label and not the million seller release, so it counts. If I can find a better looking copy, I'll certainly replace it. Super R-Type. This was actually the first R-Type game I played, which is a combination of the first two R-Types plus some original content in a pretty weird mishmash. A tough game, but I have completed it. The box itself, you may notice the two little marks up there. It looks like a bite of some sort. Definitely looks weird. And there's also like a line thing going on right at the bottom of this box here. Other than that, everything else kind of looks fine, just the minor standard wear, and that's really about it. Here's a look inside, as the instruction manual is in fairly decent shape, with a bit of wear on the bottom of the spine and a pretty bad fold right on the bottom of the back page. Other than that, looks pretty good. Precautions booklet as per usual, and the cartridge, which is in really good shape. Very nice and foily. Well, not really foily, but just really clean. Pretty happy to have this one, and I am glad to have been able to beat it. Inindo. A pretty interesting RPG that I unfortunately never really got to finish. You play as a ninja just running around a fictionalized version of medieval Japan. This box has seen some better days. There's some scratches and some spots here and there. Other than that, it does look pretty decent, and nice overall. Here's a glimpse inside, starting with this huge manual, and by manual I mean 75 pages thick. It is massive. Light spine wear, but not much else otherwise. It really looks pretty decent. This right here is actually a map and poster, which I'll show in full in just a second. But the cartridge right here is very nice and glossy. Looks pretty good. Bit of a shame I never really got to finish the game, but I'll give it a shot at some point sooner or later. Here's a full view of the poster, which has seen better days. It's definitely not in the best of shape. The most prominent problem is that it is severed right here. You can see it. And of course, it's slightly severed here. There's some folds up there, a tear at the bottom. Definitely not in the best of shape. I would just flip this over, but I'm going to cut it instead so I can be delicate here. And here is the backside, which is the map of Japan. I do kind of wish this was in better shape, but at least I have it, and it's not real common that you really find one of these. If I can find a better looking map, I can certainly replace it. Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. Baby's first RPG. This was actually the second Final Fantasy game I ever played behind the first one on the NES. And for a while, I had just the cartridge, manual, and the map. But last year, I was finally able to get a box to have it all put together, which makes it one of the few games last year that got updated. The box itself isn't particularly stellar, but it is serviceable. Some weird spots on that corner, but I'm just happy I was able to finally get a box to put everything together after many failed attempts. Here's a look inside, starting with the instruction manual, to which the bottom part of this front page is definitely screwed up, but the rest of the manual otherwise looks decent, if somewhat pretty worn. This here is the map, which you'll see in just a second, and right here is the cartridge, which, just like the past two, is very nice and glossy. This was actually the 9th game I played for this channel, and the only RPG that had outtakes. Because, surprise surprise, even though I called it Baby's first RPG, this game can kick your ass when you least expect it. Here's a full look at the map, which shows that it's definitely had its use. You can see it tear up top, as well as the fold marks pretty much everywhere. But it is a serviceable map, and I'm glad I have that, rather than just the game box and manual. Mega Man X. This game also got updated last year in the middle of March. I used to have just the cartridge, but was able to get a complete copy for a decent price. The box itself is kind of standard, usual cornerware and all that stuff, but other than that, it looks nice. Here's a quick look inside, with the instruction manual having a pretty worn spine, but the rest of it does look pretty decent. And the cartridge looks about as clean as the last few you've seen. I'm real happy I was able to give this game justice, because it definitely deserves it. It's a really good one, and I like it. Illusion of Gaia. Another game I never really finished because I'm interested in playing the game for the channel. I just haven't had the chance to do so. This box is a bit wavy, as you can kind of see from the light here. This is the same problem on both sides, unfortunately. Not entirely sure what really happened here, but the rest of the box does look decent, apart from some sideware, and that's not bad, honestly. Here's a look inside, featuring the manual, which is even thicker than the Nintendo manual at 83 pages, more than half of that being a strategy guide for the entire game. Despite its huge size, not a whole lot of spineware, though there is some rust on the staples, and a bit of fading on the black outside, but other than that, it looks pretty good. Precautions booklet as per usual. This is actually a Nintendo Power insert that's a Star Fox poster as well. I'm not really going to show this one in full. I'm pretty sure this game also had a map, but unfortunately I do not have it, if that does happen. And of course the cartridge here, which isn't as glossy as the previous ones you'd seen, but still a pretty good looking one overall. A decent game that I really hope I can give a chance for the channel soon enough. Soul Blazer. This is a fairly recent addition to my collection. I got it in November 2022. This box is pretty rough, not gonna lie, but for a game like this, having it boxed up is definitely nice, because it's not common that you actually find one. The inside here is a bit basic. I do know a map exists for Soul Blazer, but considering that this is a game where, as of recording time, the cartridge itself averages about $120, I'm just happy I'm able to get more than just the cartridge, including this manual, which is definitely worn, as you can see from just the white blotching, as well as a really worn spine. It's definitely seen better days, but it is intact, and that's the important part. The cartridge is not so worn out. Its label is actually fairly clean, if this thing ever focuses. There it is. Minus a little spot on the top left corner. So yeah, a pretty nice cartridge, and I am happy to at least have the box and manual with it. Super Metroid. Definitely one of my worst looking boxes in my entire collection. As you can see from the front, it is pretty worn. All four sides definitely have some pretty notable wear on them, especially this side, which the last person that had it put duct tape on this side for some reason, which I removed by myself without damaging anything, so that was honestly good. But at least it's a box. Once again, a pretty basic inside with just the instruction manual, though that front page definitely has a lot of folds up top, a little on the bottom, though the spine is a little bit better than Soul Blazer at the exchange of a lot of white spots everywhere. The cartridge, on the other hand, actually looks practically flawless. So, definitely cool to have something at least clean, even if I have the worst looking box in my entire collection as far as I'm concerned. But it is a complete one nonetheless. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. Not gonna lie, hearing that this game got remade for the Nintendo Switch did kind of surprise me, as I never expected it to happen, given the split between Nintendo and Square shortly after this got released. This box is actually in pretty decent shape, especially for one that I found later after I got the cartridge. Pretty decent one overall, apart from some, well, this side's really the only thing that's worn. Even the back side is not a whole lot of trouble apart from that little mark up top. Once again, a pretty basic inside with just the instruction manual, which is a little bit better than the last two you saw, though there are some marks on the spine, and the back couple pages you can see are a bit wavy. Still a decent manual. And of course you got the cartridge right here, which looks okay. Not completely glossy, but still not really in trouble either. Definitely a good game that I have played for this channel, and definitely enjoyed it, not gonna lie. I am kind of happy to see that it did get remade for the Switch, though. Maybe I might give that a try at some point if I get the game. And with that, that's all I have to show and say. If you liked what you saw, feel free to drop a like. If you're interested in how I update the collection, hit that subscribe button. But otherwise, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.